Welcome back to the channel. In this short video, I'm showing the final stage of preparation for my absolutely crazy end-grain table project made from a mix of unusual wood species. At the center of the whole piece is a massive hornbeam slab, a very dense, extremely hard wood with a light color and beautiful natural streaking. The pink wood you see here is eucalyptus. One interesting thing about eucalyptus is that a living tree can actually contain more water than solid wood fiber. During drying, especially down to around 30–40% moisture content, the wood tends to crack aggressively. After that point, further drying mostly causes warping rather than additional cracking. Once fully dried though, the wood becomes surprisingly stable, at least in my experience. I didn't notice any excessive movement during storage or while milling the pieces, and thankfully, there were no major issues with the saw blade binding either. The darker sections are bog oak, or more accurately, partially bog oak. I actually had some fully black pieces available, but in the end I decided to go with the slightly lighter cuts instead. Whether that was the right decision, we'll find out together in the next videos. For now, just enjoy the process of me trying to assemble this giant wooden puzzle, a puzzle that took me nearly 3 full days to put together. And honestly, about half of that time went into positioning the centerpiece and getting both bottom corners to line up correctly. No matter how carefully I worked, tiny inaccuracies kept adding up, eventually creating gaps between the pieces that were simply too wide to ignore, and at that point, you have to figure out a way to deal with it. Once every piece was finally locked into place, it was time for the epoxy resin. This time I tried a slightly unusual approach. First, I poured about 5 kilograms of epoxy resin to create a sort of foundation layer. A large portion of that base would later be removed during flattening and finishing, so I used a more affordable low-viscosity epoxy with a 2-day cure time. Then, once that first layer became thick and tacky, I moved on to the main pour using the more expensive casting resin. The idea behind this method was not only to save a bit of money, but also to reduce the risk of pieces floating out of position. As you can see, there are a lot of individual parts here, and some of them are tiny. It only takes one unnoticed piece drifting out of place to create a real headache later, so a little extra insurance definitely helps. And as you can already see, some of the resin started bleeding up through the pores to the surface. What happened next, I'll share in the next part, so make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss the continuation of this build story.